Hello and welcome to the Proptech Panel. I'm Jennifer Harrison and I'm the Vice President of the Proptech Association Australia. We are the peak body for PropTech ventures in Australia. We are by PropTech for PropTech. If you'd like to know more about what we do, the best place to go is our website where you can sign up for our newsletter. You can also find out more about becoming a member. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram. We've got a big event coming up in just a few weeks, which is our annual PropTech Forum. It's a one-day conference taking place in Sydney on Thursday, the 19th of October. Tickets are available to purchase and you can find all the details on the website. Every month we host a panel, and this month the topic of the panel is the intersections between insurance and property, and in particular the intersections between Insurtech and PropTech. And I've got three fantastic guests, which I'll introduce to you in just a minute. Before then, however, I would like to acknowledge that I am on Waller Medical land in Sydney, and I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Now, the insurance industry carries a lot of risk that is connected to real estate. So there are some very natural synergies to be explored in the intersections of Insurtech and PropTech. And to help us understand that today, I have three expert guests. My first guest is Scott Gunther, who is a general partner at IAG Firemark Ventures. G'day, Scott. Thanks for being with us today. How are you?
Yeah, doing very well, and it's great to be here. It's a really, really good topic, and great little panel you put together, Jennifer. And hopefully, we're going to be able to share with the audience some great insights. They're going to actually, talk a little bit about the intersect of PropTech and Insurtech. So, thanks for having us here.
My pleasure. And where are you joining us from today?
Well, I'm a Melbourne boy. I was in Sydney yesterday, and I'm actually joining from Brisbane. So, being Australia and New Zealand's largest general insurer, we have a footprint that's sort of right across our country here in Australia and New Zealand, and sort of looking after the corporate venture capital fund. It does mean you have to get around and see startups in all different parts of Australia and New Zealand and part of the world, but also we've also got a number of key offices, but also obviously a lot of key customers that are sitting here with us today in Queensland. So from sunny Brisbane today.
Fantastic. My second guest is Kathryn Wood, who is a co-founder of handdii. Thanks for being with us, Kathryn. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. Thank you for having me, Jennifer. Much appreciated.
And where are you joining us from?
I am joining you from not so sunny Las Vegas.
Wonderful. Very international globetrotting panel today we've got. And my third guest is Andrew Cox, who is a co-founder of Sensor Global. Hi, Andrew. How are you?
Hi, Jennifer. Thanks. Very good. Thank you for having me. I'm not coming from anywhere as great as Las Vegas. I'm coming from just north of Sydney on the Central Coast, where our head office is based. So thanks.
Lovely. Fantastic. Scott, let me start with you. For people who don't know IAG Firemark Ventures, can you tell us briefly who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, sure thing. Look, firstly, IAG is Australia and New Zealand's largest general insurer, and we sell motor, property, and commercial insurance through to consumers, businesses, and farmers right across Australia and New Zealand through multiple brands and partners. And IAG is a bit more than an insurer. Purpose not to make the world a safe place. It's just going to help deliver on that purpose and sort of lead the charge of innovation. Just over 7 years ago, we set up our corporate venture capital unit known as IAG Firemark Ventures. And Firemark Ventures itself, Jennifer, has its own purpose about bringing the outside world in by investing and partnering with startups that can actually transform how we deliver insurance. So we're one of the largest CVCs in Australia and New Zealand, and we're one of the a really leading insurer CVC that collaborates with other insurer CVCs all around the world. We've got 26 portfolio companies, and we're a strategic investor. We're not doing this for financial purposes. We like to take minority investments to be able to try and get the startups, emerging tech, or unique sources of data, or disruptive business models, and thinking about how we can combine them with our business to sort of transform how we deliver insurance for our customers, the community, and the industry as a whole. So PropTech's a very, very interesting part, given obviously one of the things we do insure is property, but we don't just do that at a residential point of view. Property insurance is something we do right through commercial and all the way sort of through to agri. And and seeing the abilities that Proptech has had. We've had some great success in the past, and really keen to see where some of the new capabilities will take us in the future. So that's a little bit about IAG Firemark Ventures, Jennifer.
Okay, perfect. What are some of the innovation challenges that are currently facing the insurance industry, and are any of them particularly pointy when it comes to property exposures?
Yeah, I think there's two in particular that we sort of start to see is just, the evolution of emerging customer experiences and digital first customer experiences. There's always been that sort of belief that, the insurance industry is a little bit behind and probably nowhere near as sort of advanced as maybe say our peers in the banking sector, where very, very mobile first, digital first, and then because you have a lot more higher volume of interactions and transactions. So there's a big part that we're sort of seeing is right across the globe, the insurance industry and how they're connecting with customers. Because you've got to remember those customers are also interacting with other industries, whether that's their airline, maybe it is their bank, maybe it's just how they're actually doing their shopping. A lot of that stuff is sort of digital and mobile first. So there's a big intersect around thinking about the growth of new digital and customer experiences that, the insurance industry's got to take a step forward. And then when you sort of think about that, what does that then look like for property insurance? And traditionally, we would ask ourselves a series of insurance underwriting questions to actually help, provide a customer not just with the insurance cover, but also the price and then the ongoing interactions and experiences. So there's a really big foray where we're seeing things like computer vision imagery, whether it's sort of from aerial or satellite, even at the handheld and mobile device level. And sort of also seeing what that looks like at different parts. If you do that to help you get a quote, does it actually help you lodge a claim? And everything sort of in between. And there's a real big step towards that. Some of the others are really passionate about around computer vision imagery around that, and so are most leading insurers. So that's one big part. It's around really the step change to sort of try and improve the digital and customer experience for all our customers, for all our products, for all our channels. But that's really one. The other one, no surprise, is the impacts of climate change is happening, not just across the world, but specifically on the insurance industry. Kathryn, you'll be closer than us enough to know in your business as well, right? Like, we see the individual claims that will come back through, but you also see the major impacts of natural catastrophes. And in Australia and New Zealand, where we look back in Australia, in where I am at this part of the world, in Queensland, far north, New South Wales, and other parts of Australia, the last sort of 12, 24 months has been really, really severe and impacted not just individuals, but businesses and communities. And it has a really flow impact in so many different ways for our customers and the community. But in New Zealand as well, right? Only here, some horrible sort of weather events in Auckland, and you sort of see they do end up having quite an impact and helping customers recover from claims. Whether they've had a complete total loss on their property, to even just sort of devastation into sort of farming areas where we're wiping out some of our food production, food suppliers, country with sort of major events. So I guess that's the other key thing that not just the Australian New Zealand insurance industry is seeing, but globally, the impacts that climate change are having when it has an increase in frequency and impact of natural disasters. And, you sort of lift up and sort of see what sort of happened in North America over sort of the last month with some of the, devastation through, the fires that happened through Hawaii to, hurricanes now on the West Coast as much as the East Coast. Devastation is sort of seeing is not just where we're at in Australia and New Zealand, it's facing insurers. So that impact around trying to understand how things such as climate tech and obviously that intersect across insurance, Insurtech and Proptech and even sort of mobility, because these are all the things like they're sort of impacted. So they're probably the two key big things that I look through as a leader of the corporate venture capital fund around what are the things that are probably got the biggest challenges, but maybe some of these emerging technology, disruptive business models and unique forms of data could also be, real opportunities for not just insurance, but the industry and our customers as a whole. Might have lost you, Jennifer. I think might be that you might be on mute, so might get you to.
Sorry, I think we're
I'm
getting a
back at me. I missed it.
sorry, I think we're getting a little bit of feedback from your earpieces. Your audio is not that clear.
All right. I'll see if I can change it there. How are we going now, Jennifer? Is that any better?
That is much better.
That's okay.
That's much better. Okay, fantastic. What's the hypothesis that needs to be satisfied for a startup to be a good fit for Firemark to invest? And what are your core investment themes?
Yeah, I think the first thing we sort of look at, look at anything and everything. I think, we've got investments into fintech and ag tech and prop tech. We've made investments into sort of data and analytics platforms, cybersecurity, IoT. We've got investments into computer vision, as we sort of shared before, even augmented reality. We made our foray into location intelligence, and and we look at anything that can fundamentally think about how we sort of could transform the future of insurance, and that is quite a broad remit. And then obviously what we will do is obviously respond to current business challenges and opportunities. But we'll also work with other insurers around the world, right? And sort of seeing where some of their biggest opportunities and problems are, and looking to co-invest or look to explore, similar sort of thematic areas where we think there's impact, not just for now, but even sort of future-proofing, a long way out from sort of, 2023. So sort of with those sort of parameters, then you sort of got to still get through on an individual, startup by startup basis. And of course, if you're a pure play financially, driven VC, obviously what you're looking for is a little bit different than a strategic, corporate venture capital unit of a large, insurance company, because we're looking for capability as opposed to necessarily, the big ticket financial return that you hope, that pure play VCs might find. So on that there, it's really trying to look at, we generally go in Series A is normally our sweet spot. We will look at things a little bit earlier, we'll look at things a little bit later, but that's generally where we go to. And really trying to find a startup that's actually got a real product market fit. And then there's something that it's actually not. And what's really interesting, you see that there's a lot of startups that have that, and we talk about this internally, product customer fit that may actually only be good for one, maybe say in this case, one insurer, but couldn't have that sort of scalability across multiple insurance companies and multiple sort of geographies and like. So real product market customer fit that's solving a real sort of insurance business problem or opportunity now or future is sort of the key sort of lens. Now, of course, you want to be having a good tech stack, and of course, you could have some good financials behind you, some good sales people, like all of the usual, key pieces that you go through from a due diligence point of view. But one thing that's really important to us, Jennifer, is also investing into people. And it sounds pretty simple and pretty easy, right? But we find that founders who have come from experience in the industry or have worked alongside it and have got a good leadership team and some good co-investors, some good advisors and the like, because people make these businesses too, right? So it is sort of part of what we like to be able to try and do is really look at all of the usual things that a VC will do, plus the strategic fit for us as solving an insurance business problem opportunity. But yeah, underlying all that is really good founders and good people that are in and around the business.
Right. And what's interesting for you in PropTech and why? And can you answer by reference to some examples, please?
Andrew might remember we made an investment in probably one of Andrew's first PropTech forays. We've had a number of PropTech investments here in Australia and the US. And as I sort of shared before, we look at things that are directly that we think can help us underwrite and price property insurance, help us recover from claims. And that's not just here in Australia, but we've got stuff abroad. And that's why we sort of mentioned computer vision imagery. Like we believe there's that thing. They say a picture can tell 1,000 words. Well, we also believe, that picture or an image can actually also help provide 1,000 data points. And we know data and insights is such an important part of, underwriting, pricing risk, and helping customers, in a moment of truth. So a number of computer vision imagery startups, just out of Australia and the US that we've gone through. So it's a really key part of what we've done. But we've also started to think around, adjacencies and thinking beyond just, the home insurance policy per se, because the home is something that we know that, customers live in, which they also then, they will probably need to get some, a home loan to support it, or even on the other side of things, once they're living in it, there's maintenance that may need to be sort of done with a home. So whilst we sort of think about the core of what home insurance and, home is, we sort of realize that we're part of something sort of bigger as well. So we've got a number of investments that are helping us deliver better home insurance, but also think about how we can build out, sort of that ecosystem that customers live around the home on those two other scenarios that I've sort of shared. And what we're probably looking to do is, we sort of see there's some incredible PropTech startups that, have come through Australia over the last sort of, New Zealand, the last sort of 5 to 10 years. And, we've seen that there's a lot that are coming from abroad. There's companies like Kathryn and Handy that are already, taking their services and other markets internationally. I think what we like to be able to try and do is, we don't know everything, and we don't see everything. So we think there's this uniqueness around, there may be some incredible prop techs that are solving business problems or opportunities, maybe in the UK or Europe. And what could that look like to actually come and actually help solve our market? Or on the reverse, just like what, Kathryn and the Handy team have done, there's some amazing prop techs here that could be taken internationally to help other insurers in other markets. So we also think that's something that we strive to do, is trying to help build out the broader insurer ecosystem around this here. So that's probably what excites us the most, is to sort of see what is not just happening in our own little backyard here in Australia and New Zealand. It's about how we can take the incredible startups, globally, and help bring some of those global thinking into Australia and New Zealand as well. So.
Yeah, and I think with the reinsurance market being very important to insurers, and that's essentially a global market. I think insurance is probably one of the most globally connected markets, on the planet. A lot of people might not be aware of that because it's happening behind the scenes, but it makes a lot of sense what you just said. And as someone who this morning just had to book a roofer to come and attend to some nasty patches of rust that are appearing on a flat roof, I totally hear you on the maintenance piece. Anything that makes it easier for me as a homeowner to take care of the maintenance, I love that idea. Thanks very much, Scott. We'll come back to you in a minute. I can see there's a question for you already, actually, on the Q&A. Kathryn, let's come and have a bit of a chat about Handy. For people who don't know what Handy does in a nutshell, can you give us your best elevator pitch, please?
Well, I can try. Handy is a four-sided platform that connects the insurance company, their customers, and local contractors together to help with property repairs. So, when a claim comes in, we get allocated the claim, we connect the local contractor, the contractor undertakes the inspection, provides a scope, and hopefully does the repair work.
Sounds good. Was there an aha moment for you to found the business with your co-founder? Where does the name come from? Tell us a little bit more about your origin story.
Yeah, so my co-founder, Christy Downs, she was actually a director of one of the largest insurance builders back home in Australia. And I was actually working at QBE Insurance, where I was the general manager of property and motor claims. And it really surprised me whilst I was at QBE just how difficult it was to get small claims prioritised and repaired for customers. So things like your garage door, or getting a roofer out, the patch and paint that needs to happen from storm damage, so on and so forth. And so I was sitting down with Christy one day, and we just sort of looked at each other and said, do you know what? Insurance builders have overheads, they have margins, they really like big jobs because that's what they're built for. However, local contractors actually like the smaller work because they can get in, get out, get it done really quick. But there was nothing that helped connect all of that. And Christy said to me, she goes, do you know what? You need to actually bypass me. I'm the large builder. I don't want that work. I'll do it, but I don't necessarily want that work. And so we just sort of went, you know what? Technology can help. we could build a platform that helps to connect all of the people in the ecosystem and keep the customer informed throughout the repair process. And then Handy was kind of born. As for the name, it actually doesn't have a very interesting story. We threw out a whole heap of names and then went with the double D, double I. So that kind of works for us. The bright yellow vest, however, that's our marketing ploy.
I think every time I've seen you, Kathryn, you've definitely been on brand with the bright yellow vest. But I can also it makes total sense what you said to me there. I have an investment property that is a unit, and in units very often there are leaks. You know, something leaks from the flat above, something leaks from your flat into the flat below, and then you are down a rabbit hole to try and get it sorted. And actually, it's very straightforward to sort. You know, you need a plumber or a tiler, and you need someone, as you said, who can patch and paint. They're small jobs, but the amount of kerfuffle and communication that is required around that, and especially the amount of money that you have to outlay to fix it is not that much as well. But, you know, I had to go through something where, you know, oh, you must get 3 quotes. I'm like, seriously? You know, it was a $500 job plus GST, but I had to get 3 quotes. It's like, you know, I mean, really?
Much easier if the contractor comes out and they've got the authority to just get the work done for you.
Absolutely, because also if it's an investment property and it's tenanted, you've got another layer of friction and difficulty here, because at the end of the day, someone needs to let the tradie into the property so they can do the work, and that has a whole other layer of fuss, whether it's the tenant or the property manager or the building concierge or whatever. So I think that's, is there anything else in particular in the problem that you set out to solve for that we haven't mentioned yet?
I think you kind of hit on it there, Jennifer. It's that communication link. There are often multiple parties involved in property repair, be it multiple contractors, the insurance company, your property manager, the tenant, as you said. So one of the things that we were really keen for Handy to solve for was not only being able to physically get someone at the property to undertake the repairs, but also being able to connect all of the different stakeholders through a communications platform. And that's why we are multifaceted or multi-sided, in that, you know, there might be a broker involved, there may be a number of other stakeholders. So we actually welcome all of those stakeholders into the platform so that everyone has transparency over what's actually occurring.
And you don't have people making 5 phone calls a day to each other trying to get the latest update, which just adds to the problem. Sounds like a really good problem for technology to solve. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you are using technology?
Yeah, so from a Handy perspective, I could delve into our stack and talk for eons about that, and our CTO would love it. But from a technology perspective, our platform, as I said, it connects all of the stakeholders, it brings them all together. It actually helps the local contractor who may not do insurance works to be able to follow a process and deliver back to the insurance company what the insurance company requires from them, both at a reporting level, scoping level, and also from a communication front, because insurance is highly regulated. So there are a lot of ticks and crosses that need to occur throughout the repair process, and Handy helps to deliver that. But we also integrate with a number of different products as well. So some insurance companies, they may need a particular drone service for roof repairs, or they may need a particular spatial service for internal property repairs. And so we've got integrations where we work with those companies to put the tools into the hands of the contractor, so the contractor can actually use them and follow the right process for the insurer.
Yeah, I think for insurers, that process and the governance and the auditability of that process, that workflow piece would be incredibly important, I would imagine. Yeah. And do you have an ideal customer? And I mean, who kind of is your customer, and how are you going to market?
Yes, we have an ideal customer. It's generally the insurance companies who really want to partner as opposed to procure. From a supply chain perspective, we like the medium size to the larger insurance organizations. Over here in the United States, we're partnering with a couple of the really large insurance companies, and they've actually helped us to expand our contractor network into 27, 28 states now. I think that just happened a couple of days ago, so that was a bit of a tick over. So yeah, it's really the insurance companies who are looking to deliver both on a customer outcome, quality outcome, speed, as well as we like to say that we can manage the costs effectively as well, which is important.
And what are some examples of positive feedback that you're getting?
Yeah, so from a customer point of view, so if I look at the actual consumer, we've been able to achieve a 4.9 star rating out of 5 for the past 3 years that we've been in operation. And then from an insurance company perspective, I'm sure you can imagine when you work with insurance companies, they love to put you through pilots, and those pilots can last forever. But being able to convert those pilots into contracts has been a pretty good sign of success for us.
So do you get many objections? And if so, how do you handle them?
Yeah, so we've had a really interesting time from when insurance companies don't necessarily want to disrupt how they currently do something or augment that. That can be quite difficult to navigate, where there is a particular, this is the way that we've always done it, so let's not introduce anything new and rock the boat. But you've just got to find the right stakeholder in the organisation that can then champion what it is that you're doing and help you navigate through some of those rockier patches.
I know sometimes I've heard Insurtech say, yeah, we approached such and such insurer, and they told us we've got a team that handles that. Like,
yeah.
Okay, great. You've got a team that handles that. We've got an app that handles that. It's a little bit hard to know how to get those two ends of the conversation closer together, but I guess you just keep going. Keep
persistence.
Yes, persistence, and eventually, hopefully, the two ends get closer together. Is there anything else you might be able to mention in terms of some tips, or what have you learnt about working with large enterprises like insurance companies and also property and asset managers?
Yeah, so on the insurance company side, persistence and just dog-headedness, I think, is required, but also knowing your stuff. The insurance people like to talk to people who understand the problem, understand what they're faced with internally, because often the stakeholders have a number of layers that they need to navigate and that they need to sell an idea through. Making implementation as easy as possible is really, really important, and also understanding the market that you're entering into. So a great example is over here in the US, there's a product called Xactimate, which is does all of the scoping. So it's kind of line item driven and looks at costs. And when we initially came into the market, we sort of went, oh, well, Australia's time and materials, surely the US can adopt time and materials, but they didn't. So you've got to be flexible and able to adapt. And I'm actually quite happy to say that last week we finished our integration with Exact. So it's having the flexibility and not being too tied to the idea that you've got and the way that you think it should be.
Because I know sometimes founders also say to me, it would just be great if people would buy what I've built and what I've currently got to sell, instead of telling me all the number of ways they would like me to modify it to make it better for them. But I think it's just real life, as you said, the partnering approach rather than the procuring approach. It's just a fact of the landscape. What's coming up, Kathryn, on the handdii product roadmap? Are you able to give us a little bit of a sneak peek?
Yeah, well, funnily enough, you and Scott mentioned maintenance. We are launching in January a maintenance product that goes direct to consumer. There's a couple of angles for it. The first one being that often with property claim, there's an element of maintenance work that or private works that needs to be undertaken before the resultant damage can be repaired. And so we're working with our insurance company partners to deliver contractors for that work so that the consumer actually has a place to go to find a tradie. And then over here in the States, what does happen is there's a lot of cash settlement, and then the customer's left to their own devices. And once again, we're offering a service to those customers to be able to find local contractors again who can do the works for them.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for telling us a little bit about handdii.
Thank you.
Andrew, let's have a chat about Sensor Global. First question to you is, in a nutshell, tell us what you do in your best elevator pitch.
Best elevator pitch. Well, pretty much, thanks, Jennifer. And there's some great insights there from Kathryn and Scott. Thank you. Simply put, we're here to save lives. I mean, that's all we're doing. What we do, we make rental properties safer by connecting IoT devices to the property manager. It's led by smoke alarms, which is most people have got a smoke alarm in their home, I hope, and in a rental property you have to have one. So what we do is we connect those devices to the property manager 24/7 instead of the old once a year test a button, and then for 364 days a year the property manager has no idea if the tenant has taken the alarm off the roof or tampered with it. So that's what we do. We solve that problem with software and IoT devices. And I mean, most people don't know, but 56% of people who die in a home fire are in a home without working smoke alarms. So it is a massive issue, but it hasn't been solved to date because it's only been tested once a year. So that's what we do. We've solved this problem for smoke alarms, and then we're also adding other IoT devices. You mentioned water leak a minute ago. Water leak devices that are very affordable, $30, $40 type devices that are also connected to the property manager. And I'll tell you about some other stuff we're doing later. So okay, that's what we do. Yeah.
Thank you. And tell us a little bit more about your origin story. Was there an aha moment? Who else is a co-founder in the business with you? And where did the name come from?
Okay, well, background's 20 years in property development, 10 years in property technology software, as Scott mentioned before. We've done some work together. And probably the aha moment, if I start with that, was I literally in the last business listened to property managers and asset managers whinge about the current smoke alarm sector, access for tenants. They don't know whether it's compliant 364 days a year. So we looked at this and we literally just looked at the sector and went, this is crazy. People are driving trucks around through the traffic for once a year to press a button on a smoke alarm. And we just said, let's just solve this. Let's fix it. So that was sort of the aha moment, was it needs to be solved. So, and I'm a bit of I love a good challenge. So that's sort of what we set out to do. Probably the name Sensor. Well, pretty much that's it. Our technology sensors bad stuff and alerts people. That's pretty much it. So it's remote, it's connected, and it's always on. That's it. That's our thing. So yeah.
Right. So let's dive in a little bit more deeply to the problem you're solving for. You've explained it started with the smoke detectors, but now it's broader than the smoke detectors. But also, how are you using technology in your solution?
Okay, so what we do within the home is build our own network within the home. So we've got a hub, which is a little device like this one here, and it gets hardwired into the home, and it's got its own technology, its own communication to the internet. So we're not relying on the tenant's Wi-Fi, which most things would fail if you do that. So we've built the technology to connect outside, and then the IoT devices such as a smoke alarm, water leak detector, gas leak detector, they get QR coded back into the network, and then that provides a connected vision for the property or asset manager to that property. It's essentially managed by exception. So if it's all okay, it doesn't alert you. But if there's an issue like a water leak or a tampering of a smoke alarm, for example, that will then alert the property manager and also communicate with the occupant of the home. And Kathryn was talking about communication. This is all about communication. It's about keeping people in the loop, allowing them to choose a time when they want their smoke alarms tested. without having to have some person turn up and knock on the front door and stay home from work. So that's sort of the core of what we do. But it's all about line of sight and compliance, and that's sort of where our sort of lane is: compliance and safety and property care. That's really what we do. So yeah.
Right, thank you. And can you give us some examples of, do you have an ideal customer or an ideal part of the market? I can imagine you've got a lot of great applications actually in aged care or keeping older people safer at home for longer.
100%. And there's probably three. We're very, very laser focused on the markets that we're so it's essentially around managed property is where we're going, not direct to homeowner at this point. It's three core sectors. So residential property managers, the landlord's our customer, but we access them via residential property managers, and we integrate with their software to do that. Community housing providers and retirement village operators. They're sort of our three core markets. Strata will sort of, small lot strata is going to come in the second phase for what we're doing. But the latter, like community housing providers and retirement villages, they have a really, really high level of care and responsibility because they're often the property owner, they're the property manager, and they're the carer. So we're sort of focusing on sectors that have got very high legislative requirement, and smoke alarms is obviously a great place to start for that. So that's it. They're ideal customers, and yeah, that's them.
Okay, and can you give us some examples of positive feedback you're getting from the market?
Well, we're pretty new to the market, so we're not haven't been around as long as Kathryn's business, which is, but you know, this is how it all starts. So the feedback is really around from a property manager's perspective. It's around you're saving me time. I feel better because I know I'm compliant. The tenant's living in a safer home because it's now being connected 24/7 for the operation of the smoke alarm and it's being tampered or not. And then from a trade supplier perspective, most small electricians, the worst job they can do is drive around in a truck. It's their worst hours, drive around in a truck and press a test a smoke alarm button, where when they arrive, they're not selling the customer anything, okay? It's a very low margin, most electricians hate doing smoke alarms, and we're re-empowering the local electrician to take back the management of smoke alarms for a whole real estate agency with 1,000 properties, because they don't have to go there and press a button. They just go there if there's an issue. So that's sort of that's probably the a summary. Yeah, what your question? Yeah.
That sounds like a fantastic use case for technology. I know a utility company that actually now has an AI program simply to manage the routing of the driving piece of sending the technicians out there, because the driving piece is actually where most of this skilled trades time was being taken up, rather than actually doing the work that they have, invested the time and the effort to get skilled at and be qualified in their trade. So that sounds fantastic to me. How do you think you're going to go, or how are you finding it so far, engaging with the property managers, and do they tend to be smaller ones or larger ones, and are you finding any differences there?
Not particularly. They've all got exactly the same issue, which is access and trades and organisation of keys and that sort of thing. So it's a pretty broad, pretty known sector in property management. But we integrate with the trust accounting systems like Property Tree, Property Me, etc. And we've got essentially, we make it simple for our customer to talk to their customer, which is the landlord, and provide that sort of automated communication pathway. So when the landlord, essentially they get offered the solution. We're a subscription model, which we're a SaaS business. We just happen to have IoT technology linked to us. So with the landlord pays us, a lower annual subscription for something that helps them. You can get the alarms tested 6 times a year if they want. There's no limit. So that's sort of our sort of push through to the market is really easy, and that the feedback is wow, you've solved it. You're making me more efficient and you're making me more compliant for a property manager. Yeah.
And are you getting any objections?
No, well, it's probably, I think there's a real misconception. Some landlords say, well, wait a minute, I've got a working smoke alarm in my house. Why should I, just happy to be tested once a year, and that's okay. But, in my last business, we were doing safety inspections for landlords. They didn't have to do them. It wasn't legislated. And people have got this perception that landlords don't care about the tenant. But there's a massive proportion of landlords that are awesome people that are running great businesses and really care about the safety of the tenant in the home. So the feedback would be for a landlord who doesn't care. There's some of them, they're probably not our customer, but the ones that do care embrace this technology because it's putting smart technology into their rental home. And we even offer them now a rental model where they can rent the stuff instead of buying it. So it's sort of we're breaking a few new paths. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Andrew, what's coming up on your product roadmap? Are you able to give us a little sneak peek?
Yes, I'll give you a few little secrets. We're building right now out some the things that take the action. So if you have a water leak, we're building a water shutoff valve for residential properties. So when it detects the water leaks, it shuts the valve off. If you've got a gas leak or a carbon monoxide leak, it'll shut the gas off in the property. So we've got some really it's sort of alert, but also now act. So that's sort of taking safety and property care to another level. And water leakers, and obviously Kathryn and Scott were the experts in what these things cost the economy every year, and the insurers. It's hundreds of millions of dollars, and if we can get in front of that curve and stop the water from actually causing the damage, it's a great benefit for the sector. So
it's like the people who go away on holiday and find out that one of the cables to the washing machine has perished,
100%.
or one of the cables to the dishwasher has perished, and they come home to an entire property that's flooded. And if it's in a block of units, that's obviously a huge problem.
Yeah. So that's probably the main thing for us. But we are sticking in our lane. We're compliance, safety, property care. We're not doing door openers and other things because we've sort of got a very, very clear focus on what we're doing. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for telling us more about Sensor Global, Andrew.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Anyone who's joining us live, this is where we're going to open it up to Q&A. If you do have a question for anyone on the panel, please feel free to pop it into the Q&A function. I can see there's one in there. I don't know if you can take this, Scott. It's a question about the use of aerial imagery in the insurance industry and how that is impacting on the quote and claims experience.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll give you. I'll step back and give you some, real sort of examples of how we've sort of injected this sort of capability into our business. Through investing and partnering with a startup, and then testing, trialing, and getting through those pilots, Kathryn, and then ultimately looking to do better, right? And I just use this example that one of the things you can sort of imagine is if you're trying to get a home insurance quote, and there's a number of questions that you get asked for the insurer to better understand you and your property, so they can determine whether they appropriately assess and underwrite and then price the risk as well. There are some questions in there from a customer that can become quite difficult to answer. So I'll give you like 3 scenarios, right? So if you've got a simple sort of question, do you have a swimming pool? And if you're lucky enough to have a swimming pool, you pretty much know it's a bit of a yes, no. I either have a swimming pool or I don't have a swimming pool. It's a pretty easy one. And you mentioned a bit about roof before, Jennifer. Like, you sit there and go, what are the materials that your roof's made out of? And you might have to pause for a minute, and you might have to think, actually, I do have terracotta tiles, or I might have colorbond roof. But you can sort of see the cognitive difference between, yes, I have a swimming pool, yes, no, versus what's the materials my roof's made of, that you started to think through. You might get this other question and goes, well, what's the slope of the land that your house is built on? And you go, I've got no idea what that could possibly be. And why is that important, right? We just talk about water leaks, Andrew. You sort of think about impact, what that could end up being, right? So there are different sort of questions that an insurer will actually ask a customer, which actually is really important for the insurer to sort of underwrite and determine, the type of risk and how they assess and price that risk accordingly. So aerial imagery and use of, the attributes that come back out and how AI can start predicting what type of sort of attributes they are, actually really helps with that cognitive customer load, but also helps with accuracy for underwriting. So imagine through getting a quote, and some of those questions were already like pre-filled for you. And you had the ability to go, actually, we know that you've got a swimming pool, we know you've got a ColourBond metal roof, and we actually know that the slope of your land is, whatever it ultimately ends up being. And allows a customer to still go in and actually, override and the like. But that's really one of the ways that, we're seeing insurers using computer vision imagery from satellite and obviously sort of flyover. And there's even some recent stuff we've invested in, just getting into higher fidelity, higher resolution, and better coverage and better frequency. The technology in computer vision imagery is just going from strength to sort of strength. So that's sort of how you might use it in the in sort of that quote buy experience. And in the claims experience, we've even had a case study we sort of put out on record, right? It was I think where it helps with claims recovery, right? Because it actually helps when it gets into that claims process. And, Kathy, all too well about this too, right? The complexity goes back through, what are the materials, what's been damaged, how we actually then allocate trades when they get, it is why sort of, parts of why Handy has a really, important part to play in the broader ecosystem. But at the same time, insurance also gets caught through, and you know enough about this too, Kathryn, with fraud, right? And this is something that, you're not trying to do this for evil, you're trying to do this for good, right? And, you sort of can sit there and go, hi, I've lodged my claim and I have this in my backyard and I've got that's been damaged and the like. So computer vision imagery is also where it actually can not just, help with that sort of streamline of the customer experience, reduce the claims, process and handling times and get better outcomes. It can also actually help sort of start moving some of that sort of claims fraud. And it does happen in our industry. So there's sort of two use cases where computer vision actually helps. And the AI that is actually getting developed is on the attributes of those properties. And obviously, as the AI models and the learning gets smarter and smarter, the different models that get introduced just allows for different unique experience, which ties back to what I sort of shared right earlier at the start, Jennifer. One of the things the insurance industry might have used to do is, here's a 10-page application form around completing this for your home insurance quote, right? That's how, we've sort of gone through. So that's just trying to give you a bit of an example around how we use it, but also how it solves to that earlier problem that you asked.
I heard a use case once of the AI and the aerial imagery can now tell the difference between genuine hail damage and whether someone maybe just went up there with a hammer, to try and get a new roof out of their insurance company. It's amazing. And I mentioned this is the kinds of things, Kathryn, one of the things I was going to ask you is about your experiences of being at Insurtech Connect, which is one of the, I think the Vegas Insurtech Connect is probably the biggest Insurtech show on the face of the planet. Sometimes it's at places like this where you see some of these more imaginative and visionary future use cases for technology. Can you share a little bit about your experiences of being at Insurtech Connect?
Yes, first of all, I would say the first time that we rocked up to ITC, we were flabbergasted that there were, I think it was 9,000 people attended that year, and it was just post-COVID. And you sort of look around and you go, oh my goodness gracious, this country is so large. But the other point about ITC is it's great for actually seeing what's emerging in the insurance space, be that automotive, property is where we're interested. But it gives us the ability to go, well, what tools are coming out that could help our contractors do a better job and a more effective and efficient job. And that's where integrations, become really, really important for a company like Handy, because what we want to be is the tool in the contractor's hands that gives them access to all of the bits that they need to do for the insurance industry. And there are some really, really amazing products out there. Scott, Planner, there's Hoster AI, there's some great imagery stuff where a contractor can actually, or even a homeowner can take photos of the internal workings and get a full materials takeoff list, which then gets passed through to the contractor, and that's what makes up the scope. And which is awesome, because then the contractor doesn't have to write the scope and they save a whole heap of time, and the insurance company knows that they're paying the right amount of money. So ITC, for anyone who's never been, I would strongly and highly, highly recommend it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kathryn. And Andrew, one of the questions I wanted to ask you was about your experience being in the Reach Accelerator. Reach Australia are one of our community partners at Proptech Association Australia, and Peter Shravemade, who's the local director for Reach, is also on the Proptech Association Board of Directors. Can you tell us a little bit about what happens if you're lucky enough to be accepted into that cohort? Because I think applications for the 24 cohort I'll just check it. I think there's a few days left actually for people to get their applications in for the 2024 cohort.
Well, I appreciate it. It's a great program, and we were probably, I think Trevor told me when we came into the program, we were the single only pre-market startup they had invested in the Second Century Ventures, having seen the sort of global application for what we have and the problem we're solving. But they're, Pete's a great operator, and the team there, Tom and Ev, they're fantastic, and they're very good connectors. So the program from a startup perspective is you got connection to a lot of other startups who are some are more advanced, some are, most of them are in market already, but they're also they're in all the different sectors that you're sort of looking at playing in. So and then you get the connection to the global startup. Like next week we're going to San Diego to meet all the cohort companies and some other previous ones like DocuSign and some great ones that have been through that program. So I'd strongly recommend, if you don't get a lot of money up front, if you're there trying to raising dough for a startup, it's not a big capital investment to begin with, but they make that investment across 40 or 50 companies a year, and then they sort of follow in and convert as you sort of start to get traction. So but what it is, having SCV on your register or on your in your company from a capital raising perspective, if you're a startup, is fantastic, because it's got validation. It's validation of your idea and your concept by one of the largest PropTech investors in the world. So so I'd strongly commend it to anyone who wants to do it. It's a great program. Really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Scott, final question maybe for you. Given your years of experience now working with early stage ventures, what are some of the factors that you could comment on that help a startup become a scale up and transition from that really early stage to the more motoring along and scaling up stage?
I'll give you two that really sort of stand out, and I think Andrew and Kathryn, I'd love to get your sort of views on it, right? Because I think I could sort of go back the other way. I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, Jennifer too. Really good founders and CEOs actually surround themselves with really good people. If you've got a strong cap table, or you've got some really good mentors, or another co-founder, Kathryn, who's been, in that sort of space, or just even an advisor or a mentor who's actually been through and actually, built businesses before, or might have even just come from, maybe a corporate side, or got some sort of going back through and actually having some really good people around you is so important. And I think you can actually sort of compare and contrast where the last sort of 2 years where you're starting to see, the macro financial economic markets have started to change, and there have been a number of startups that have across the world have either started to fail or have failed, and there's even things you start to sort of see. There's even some predatory M&A starting to sort of happen to where there's been some great businesses with great tech, but maybe they just haven't been necessarily lucky in actually getting the targets they were hoping in the last sort of 2 years, because the economy's got a little bit harder, or raising capital's harder, and so you're starting to see some great founders and some great ideas just fall by the wayside. And I think one of the things is, when you compare and contrast to those who have actually made it through, one of the really key indicators we said, they've actually surrounded themselves with really good advisors and good people around them who have got some really good commercial acumen and experiences to actually come back through. And when we work with some founders and some like those who actually want to listen and take advice and keep that they've been some of the really ones who have been sort of successful. So I always sort of say that's one, and that can be really intangible, right? How do you actually sort of do that, to do that and measure that? But that's definitely one, Jennifer, that I would sort of put to the top. I think the other one that's actually really important is, and Andrew and Kathryn, you both sort of said this. You said, I think before, like persistence, Kathryn. Like it's definitely something that when you're in those early stages, you have to be very realizing this is a tough gig. You're working long hours. Every day feels like it's sometimes a nightmare, and you're having high fives at the end of the day when you get these sort of little wins. I sort of look at the word as being resilient. and those who actually can ride the highs and the lows and actually sort of get into that, not just as a founder, but again, with all the people that you're actually got in the business and surround them, having a really strong, resilient team actually is what actually helps you take you from, you know, that sort of startup to scale up. And I probably just sort of, you know, end that again. We've seen a number of companies go from startup to scale up. And what's interesting to note is that sometimes the people that actually help you start the business aren't always going to be the ones that actually help you scale up the business. And that's just, you know, you've got to be able to be quite resilient. And that's why I try and tie those two together to sort of accept a little bit about that. And that's okay, right? And that happens in business all around the world, not just in Proptech and Insurtech and in Australia. So they're probably the two key things. And I think that sort of thread about, you know, the teams aren't, and the people who always started aren't necessarily all the ones that end it. So.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very true comment, Scott. And, you know, one of the things I see is that in the very early stages, you want people who can just get it done, right? You don't want people who, to get something done, need meetings and minutes and, you know, like consensus. You just want someone who can get it done. But later, as you have more responsibilities, more stakeholders, more, you know, communication and governance, you need people who are more comfortable, you know, getting that consensus. And, you know, you still need people who can get it done, but maybe they need to get it done with a bit more, you know, process around it. And you're right, they're not necessarily the same people at all. And if you've got the wrong person at the wrong stage, I think, you know, they're probably going to be a bit of a square peg in a round hole, and it's just not going to be ideal for everyone. Yeah. Well, I think that probably brings us up about to time, really. Thank you very much for joining me. I love exploring the intersections between insurance and property, and Insurtech and Proptech, and other parts of the technology ecosystem and Proptech. Thank you very much to my guests for today. Thank you to Scott Gunther from IAG Firemark Ventures.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Kathryn and Andrew, as well.
Thank you to Kathryn Wood from handdii.
Thanks, Jennifer. Really enjoyed it.
And thank you to Andrew Cox from Sensor Global.
Thanks, Jennifer, and obviously for Stone and Chalk for a bit of I've seen their logo there, so thank you for helping host. And great to see you, Kathryn and Scott. So look forward to the future.
Yes, thank you. So Stone and Chalk are our event partner. This session has been recorded and it will be made available on the Stone and Chalk YouTube page in due course. There will not be a panel in October because we'll be focusing on our Proptech Forum on Thursday, October the 19th. The next panel will be in November. And to make sure you're in the loop about what that will be and when, please sign up to the newsletter or make sure you're following us on LinkedIn and Instagram. Thank you very much for joining us. Hope to see you soon.